different in their approach on the opposite side. We really should have put forward a motion saying that we don't want to restore the original scrutiny panels because then we might pass it. Well, here we go. That's the situation we're in. I'm disappointed by how many former chairs of overview and scrutiny panels seem to be against reinstating these panels now, because it's completely distorted what we want to do. We want to restore these panels now, not perhaps next year. The problem is the guarantees from the Labour group opposite guarantee nothing. They didn't say that they definitely will be reinstated. They just said, oh, we might do it when there's a budget. We really need guarantees, and that's why I can't support this motion. If you could guarantee that the original panels will be reinstated, then I could support it. But since there's no certainty, I'm afraid I can't support what's being put forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I've got Councillor Pomfret.
Number of scrutiny panels. Well, there used to be 3. All of a sudden, 4 is the ideal number. There's no magic answer to this. It would seem to me that the opposition really just wants to have as many meetings, quantity-wise, as they can manage. Bring the whole thing to a grinding halt, bust the budget and, prove that they're right. All that they will prove is that they're very good at, filling time with what can be useful conversation, sometimes useful debate, or perhaps things which should be done in a different way. I mean, I can see, work smarter. I was always being told that. Well, that's what I'm saying we should do now. I've been on scrutiny panels. I've been on 3 scrutiny panels. Am I proud of it? Well, it was very interesting. It was good for my education. I learned a lot about the National Health Service. I learned a lot about the internal workings of the council. All things, really, which largely I should have found out by other means, not by getting the council and lots of other people to sit in a room. So I think overview and scrutiny is obviously about finding out, but most of the finding out should be done before the meeting. So I think we should have 2 panels who do lots of their finding out before the meeting. They have lots of documentation, which they, of course, read before they come to the meeting, and then they have an informed debate. Not spending lots of time, which I don't know what it's been like in the last year or 2, but certainly I spent a lot of time listening to very interesting talks and so on, when really I should have had all that information before the meeting began. So I'm not in favour of spending council taxpayers' money on basically educating councillors in a very, very, very expensive way. If we want to be educated, and I hope we do, we should do that in our own time, via emails, by asking officers, by talking with them and finding out before the meetings. So I'm seconding this motion because I think that's the way we should work. And if we have 2 panels, we might find it doesn't work. Time will tell. Obviously, the opposition thinks that they know already because they've decided they're going to make it not work. Well, if that's their attitude, somebody should help us all. You should be sitting there thinking, how are we going to make this? You're the opposition, in the scrutiny panels. How are we going to really scrutinise things? How are we going to get to the truth of things? How are we going to get to the bottom of issues? That's what you should be doing. Not thinking, well, how can we fill the time in 49? I've never known some areas of the councils will ever come to a scrutiny panel at all. Because they work perfectly without politicians getting too involved. OK, there are very important issues. You've mentioned some of them. But not 49 very important issues. If you can't set priorities for overview and scrutiny, well, you should perhaps get another job. So the fewer panels working as effectively as possible, the better. Because we should be working as councillors, not going along expecting public money to be spent while we have a nice conversation. Conversation should be quality. Quality, not just quantity.
So, thank you for that, Councillor. I've got Councillor Guttridge next.
Overview and scrutiny. I went to the first internal overview and scrutiny, and we were told that we were going to discuss Gresham Road, which does need scrutiny. How many million is it nearly over budget? It was on the last planning environment meeting. It was supposed to be in June. We went to the meeting this time. Then we see on the work programme, it's March 2019. We did eventually, after some cajoling and talking, we have managed to get it hopefully back to September. We have succeeded in getting another meeting for Glendale, which I was told, of course, they're only budgeted to come to 2 meetings per year. I would have thought they would have come and said why we haven't cut the grass and done the job that we pay them for. My residents are fed up of the grass not being cut. And as for the bins, well, and Gresham Road, I'm just in despair. We budget to spend 800,000, now 1.4 to 1.6, and we've still not got a waste licence. The waste licence, we're waiting on the fire licence. So how many more thousands are the Borough Council, the ratepayers of the Borough, being paid to pay for a Gresham Road, which, ideal, is going to save us money? We've already got a problem at Gresham Road. We can't park everybody there. They're having to park vehicles off-site. If they won the dust cart contract, we couldn't park the dust carts on there. So I think scrutiny is very important, and I fully support our motion, but not yours. I can't vote for that. Thank you.
Councillor Tremors.
Pomfret, I agree. Scrutiny should be effective. Councillors should understand what they're talking about. It shouldn't just be about endless sessions to fill time to try and educate councillors, because frankly, from what I've seen, councillors that have been here decades, the education hasn't worked, quite clearly. But what's this about, really? I mean, they have a majority and the mayor will just pile in with a casting vote again to push it through. So there was no need to negate this. That was just silly politics. Everybody can see, anybody that cares to read the paper reports or look at the videos of this will see that the motion proposed one thing and something was proposed that completely negated the theme, the central narrative of that. Well, the decision's been made, and I'm not asking for that to be reconsidered. All I'm saying is it looks and smells like a council that is in no overall control, lost control, clinging to power, one disaster after another. All they're doing is trying to cut down on scrutiny for a quiet life until the time comes when you're out of office, and whilst you cut scrutiny, you want to get as much of the benefits out of it as you can. No question of any of the chairs losing out on their nearly £1,000 a meeting. We're all happy to put forward the fact that none of us get to be portfolio holders or get to be chairs of scrutiny committees, even if we have deputies that have to step up and chair those meetings sometimes. So we're offering the little bit that we get to give up some of that so that it doesn't cost the council any more. But heaven forbid that this failing council clinging on by its fingernails should do anything that gives up 1 penny of the money that it's been enjoying for 42 out of the last 44 years? What is the public going to think of you in the next 2 years as you cling on, cut down on scrutiny, and just look after yourselves? Fingers in the ears to everything the public says about the grass cutting, about everything, about the town centres, the lot. And when we try and have a motion, we can't even do that, even though you're going to win the vote. It's got to, people will draw their own conclusions, and they won't be nice ones, and rightly so.
Next, got Councillor Smith.
I'd just like to pick up on some points that Councillor Pomfret made in his very motivated speech. He talks about us wanting to waste money on this side of the house, on more scrutiny, and he also talked about having the details long before a meeting so people know what they're talking about. Well, if he'd read the original papers on our original motion, he would have seen that we had a very balanced financial solution to deliver increased scrutiny. There was no extra cost involved. We were just introducing more scrutiny. When the original budget cuts, the ruling party lamented the loss of scrutiny, blaming cuts, and they were forced to do it. We're offering them an opportunity with the original motion to put that right at no cost to the taxpayer. I can't vote for the amendment because it removes the main body of what we're trying to achieve. And if there's anything we've spoken about tonight, with all the motions that have gone, the original motion is one that they should surely easily vote for.
I've got Councillor Evans.
Councillor Jackson said in her opening speech that it was council that cut scrutiny, but I wanted to put on record that the Conservative group certainly didn't vote to cut scrutiny. And in the budget that we put forward at the last budget setting night, we had a budget that kept scrutiny at its current levels. Labour's amendment, they want to review it at the next budget setting. That's 7 months away. So we have to wait 7 months for you to realise that this is the wrong decision. We've told you many things in the past. You ignored us, and what happened? It went terribly wrong. Parking charges. We told you not to increase them. You increased them, and we've lost money. Gresham Road, you didn't listen to us. What happened? There's nearly a £2 million overspend. There's some really important things going on in this council over the next few months. At the next cabinet meeting, the Borough Plan modification report goes to cabinet. At this time in our borough's history, what we need more than ever is strong scrutiny to ensure that this council is accountable, open and transparent. Councillor Jackson is expecting the Conservatives to sit on our chairs and she expects us to just wait there and see what happens. I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that. 67% of my residents in the Slough ward voted me in. I stood on a manifesto that promised to restore scrutiny to the levels it once was. I certainly will not vote for your pathetic motion this evening.
Councillor, and now Councillor Wilson, right to reply.
Thank you. I'll seek your clarification on this. I believe we've still got to vote on actually making the amendment the substantive motion, then we have to vote on the substantive motion itself. Right, thank you for clarifying that. I can't vote for the amendment. It's actually, strangely enough, in times like this, when I miss former Councillor Copland with his infamous dictionary. If I look up negate in the dictionary, it says to make ineffective or to nullify, to void, to render invalid, to make ineffective, to neutralise. Every single one of those descriptors applies to what Councillor Hancock has done tonight. I'm sure Mr Copland can give him some lessons in the dictionary later on when he meets up with him. But you've made your ruling, we have to live with it. Councillor Pomfret mentioned that we went from 3 to 4 scrutiny panels. Yes, we did, because we had a proper working party which looked into how scrutiny could and should be done better. Indeed, I think Councillor Watkins served on it with me at the time, and a few others, maybe Councillor Shepherd, Jill Shepherd, I can't quite remember. Forgive me if I've got that wrong. But it was on a cross-party basis that we increased from 3 to 4. And it was the right decision to do. And we all, at this council, voted to just strip a little bit off our allowances to allow that 4th committee to come into being. But what did we get from the controlling party over scrutiny this time? A diktat. Announced, 1 hour before Budget Council, you were going to be scrapping overview and scrutiny to just 2 panels. No consultation, no thought, no papers, didn't even know what they were going to consist of, didn't know how many members, which policy ideas, nothing. When I stood here and questioned then Councillor Harvey, he said, doesn't matter, we'll leave it to the next council to sort out. Could have set up a working party to look at which areas would look at which particular bit. Internal, external was one idea. Perhaps we could have looked at doing corporate and environmental. That might have given a better split between the balances, but no. You railroaded it through without a single consideration for backbench members who actually care about scrutiny. And there are a number of members opposite who I think have perhaps served on Cabinet too long and forgotten what real scrutiny involves and does. Now, Councillor Pomfret gave actually a really good exercise in obfuscation because he's actually trying to defend the indefensible in his motion, in his speech. I'm not calling meetings for the sake of having meetings. I'm calling meetings to do my job, which I was elected to do. Every single meeting I go to is my time. I'm willing to give up that time to do my job. If you aren't willing, get off the pot and let someone in who will do the job. Now, he talked about working smarter. Well, perhaps he should be giving some lessons to his colleagues on working smarter. Make it work. We have actually sat here. Every single member on scrutiny has tried to make it work in these current two. It took us 1 hour just to even agree our work programme on internal. Because we have got that much to do. And it is not working from the outset. We've had to requisition one already. The balance of numbers isn't working because you can't fit everyone around the table. You didn't even think about that. The proposals we had could have been written on the back of a fag packet, perhaps one of the shadow budgets which John McDonnell puts forward. But obviously that the controlling group have been taking lessons in that. What we are on about doing is enabling backbench members to do their job. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean everyone speaks, but as far as I could see, the only people who were properly actually investing in scrutiny were the usual suspects from Labour and every single member of my group on both internal and external engaged. We are investing in it. We are trying to make it work, contrary to what you're saying. But if that means we hold your feet to the fire, if that means we make you come to one more meeting, if that means we put you out slightly, grow a pair, because we will do it each and every single time, because that's what we're elected to do. And we will continue to do that, because this council has so many issues going on that this scrutiny panels cannot cope. And our residents, 51% of our residents backed it. You haven't got a mandate at all.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Right, thank you, Councillor Wilson. We're now going to move to the vote. Okay, first of all, we're voting on the amendment.
Okay. Councillor Brown. Councillor Croft. Councillor Daffin. Councillor Doughty. Councillor Elliott. Councillor Evans. Councillor Gazane. Councillor Glass. Councillor Golby. Councillor Gran. Councillor Gutteridge. Councillor Hancox.
4.
Councillor Hocking. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Condacore. That's left, we think. Councillor Llewellyn-Nash. Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Longdon. Councillor Pandir. Councillor Phillips. Councillor Pomfret. Councillor Rudkin. Councillor A. Sargent. Councillor J. Sargent. Councillor J. Shepherd. Councillor T. Shepherd. Councillor Smith. Councillor Tandy. Councillor Tromans. Councillor Walmsley. Councillor Watkins. And Councillor Wilson. 17-16. So that's carried. That becomes a substantive motion.
The amendment is moved 16-17, so it's now the substantive motion.
Yes. Okay, so the amendment was one. So now we're going to vote on the substantive motion.
Again, just to clear things up for me, because I've already been told I'm sick. Could you tell me, now it's become a substantive motion, do I get the right of reply now?
Point of order, Mr Mayor. If I may, two things. Councillor Hancock isn't turning his microphone on, so we're not hearing what he's saying.
It's on now.
Okay, Councillor Hancock, you've got a right reply.
Mr Mayor, it's rather naively, I suppose, I thought my amendment, which I only had a brief introduction to, was going to be a friendly amendment. It appears not. But it's unfortunate, Mr Mayor, that we have to lower ourselves into not having a proper debate, but by having insults such as Councillor Troman's put to us about a lack of intelligence. Intelligence doesn't always work, Mr Mayor.
Intelligence, thank you.
Sometimes, Mr Mayor, and that's the problem we're having here. On a personal basis, Mr Mayor, I left school when I was 15 to go into an apprenticeship in the building trade. 15 and a half, I left home to work away from home. Later on, I did a bit of further education and got a few. They were still O-levels then, but that doesn't particularly make me intelligent. I like to think I've got some common sense as well. If we move back to the reasons for removing some scrutiny panels, and my amendment is suggesting that there's a review of that. It was due to cuts. And we can't keep saying it enough. It's their cuts, it's their government that has reduced all the budgets to local authorities to the extent that some have gone bust. They won't be happy until we've gone bust and they can just put everything out to their private friends. Mr Mayor, they speak about the need for extra meetings. Earlier, they spoke about costs. By calling all these extra meetings, like the one tonight, there are costs to this council. And that's why my words, vexatious and frivolous, need to be looked at. And I would ask the leader of the council to look at maybe charging the opposition for when they call unnecessary meetings. Now, Mr Mayor, it was also suggested that this was meant to shut down the issue. It's not meant to shut down anything. It calls for a review of it. It's not costed. They keep saying it's fully costed. No cost to the ratepayer. All we got, Councillor Grant saying he might be able to manage to lose a small amount of his allowance. I don't know what... Sorry, he's waving some... Is it the racing page for tomorrow?
No.
Mr Mayor, small amount of his allowance. Mr Mayor, their costings spoke about...
Just a minute, Bill.
Councillor Hancock is saying... Sorry, Hancock's tonight, believe it or not. Excuse me?
Can we just...
Oh, and I can't speak properly. Well done. Anyway...
Clarification, what I said was, it was said by another member as well. I wasn't mocking anybody.
Oh, yeah, okay. 14 is costed. It's costed from allowances and a rejig of existing allowances, which takes some of the scrutiny chairs down from £1,000 per meeting, which you're actually now supporting. So, yeah, well done for that. You talk about the ratepayer. The ratepayer would be very interested in that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It wasn't a point. There's an issue around the whole timing of this. The opposition accuse us of delaying things. I don't believe that's it. I think we're actually giving it proper time to consider it. That's against their attempt to hurry through what they want to do. I said earlier in my introduction, the Constitution doesn't allow for a motion to rescind a decision of this council within 6 months. They've only got it through by signing...
Councillor Hancock, okay, Councillor Wilson.
This, but actually the Constitution does provide a mechanism to rescind a decision within 6 months if there's enough decisions. It hasn't been done against the wishes of the council or against the signatories. It's a constitutional and legal provision agreed with the head of legal that it could be done. So if you're going to make accusations about us, at least get your facts right.
Mr. Mayor, what I will say is I also had advice on that today. Otherwise I wouldn't have said it. I think enough's been said, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy for the vote to be taken. Thank you.
Right. So, over to you. Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Beaumont. Councillor Brindley-Edwards. Councillor Brown. Councillor Croft. Councillor Daffin. Councillor Doughty. Councillor Elliott. Councillor Evans. Councillor Gazane. Councillor Glass. Councillor Golby. Councillor Gran. Councillor Gutteridge. Councillor Hancock.
4.
Councillor Hocking. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Condacore. Councillor Llewellyn-Nash. Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Longdon. Councillor Pandair. Councillor Phillips. Councillor Pomfret. Councillor Rudkin. Councillor A. Sargent. Councillor J. Sargent. Councillor J. Shepherd. Councillor T. Shepherd. Councillor Smith. Councillor Tandy. Councillor Tromans. Councillor Walmsley. Councillor Watkins. And Councillor Wilson. That's carried 17-16 again.
Okay, thank you. That's now carried.
That's it. Final motion. Third motion.
Okay, now moving on to the final motion. So can I ask Councillor Wilson, first signatory to the requisition, to move the third motion? Councillor Wilson.
Suspension of standing orders to enable business to be conducted tonight. There are a number of people in the gallery who have sat very, very patiently waiting for an item that they hold very dear to their hearts. There is a possibility, I don't know the exact time we started this council, but if enough people speak, we could come close to the 3 hours for the requisition. So to enable business to be concluded, I'd move a suspension of standing orders.
Right, okay, thank you, Councillor Wilson. So we're going to have to move to a vote on whether we want to extend the time to complete the business. So, Councillor Pomfret.
By the clock, our allotted slot expires before I go on to any vote, if that's possible, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so we're talking another hour to deal with this.
That we carry on, and if we need to suspend standing orders, we do it at a later time, but not now. Thank you.
I'm happy to do that, Mr. Mayor. I just didn't know one recorded it, but if that's the understanding, because I'm quite conscious that there are people who have been waiting a very, very long time. So, in moving the motion, Mr. Mayor, this election saw over 51% of the voters of Nuneaton and Bedworth reject the 42 years of Labour rule that this borough has seen. Labour, for now, remain in power, but they have lost the trust and confidence of the people of Nuneaton and Bedworth, and no more so than the way they have dictated to residents over the borough plan. A decade in the making, the deeply unpopular borough plan is forcing through development in our towns at an unprecedented rate. To make such massive changes to the makeup of our communities requires this council to have the consent of the people and to be open, honest and transparent about the process. Under Labour, the council has been none of these things, and after the election results, it is quite clear that Labour do not have the consent of the people to do anything, let alone force large housing estates onto them. Whilst we are approaching the end of the borough plan process, in some respects we are just at the beginning too. Progress will need to be monitored. Reviews will need to be conducted at some point to ensure that we have the most up-to-date data and plans necessary to sustain new developments and community consent. Eventually, we will be starting on the next borough plan for after 2031. Before we know it, we'll be on to that one too. That is why we on this side of the chamber believe it is absolutely vital that we reform how we do this, to bring communities on board and ensure that residents have confidence that this process is being done in an open, honest and transparent way. A local plan committee will ensure that the process is done in the most democratic way possible. It will be open to the public wherever possible, be advertised, have a formal agenda for all to see, have proper minutes so all can see what has been done, and filmed for residents to see online how this council is operating. There will be times when things cannot be dealt with in public, where there are commercial sensitivities, and the law does not allow us to do this. But the presumption of the council should be in favour of openness and accountability. This motion does that. An immediate review will need to be conducted if our borough plan goes through. The last Labour leader signed us up to an unfair agreement that forces us to accept 4,000 overspill from Coventry. Not one resident got to vote on that deal. Our motion will also require the leader of the council to renegotiate that deal as part of the review process and do so on a basis of fairness. How is it fair that the most densely populated district in Warwickshire has to take such a large percentage of the overspill when other districts have far more land than we do? Our motion will require the leader to take the fight to our neighbours and negotiate a deal for Nuneaton and Bedworth and Bulkington, and not a deal for Coventry. Mr. Mayor, our manifesto set out this approach in a clear way and was overwhelmingly backed by the residents of Nuneaton, Bedworth and Bulkington. 16,173 people voted for the contents of what is in this motion. Will just 17 Labour councillors stand in its way? I move the motion.
Motion. Right, open for debate now. I've got Councillor Phillips.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I'm hoping to hand out a friendly, even at this late time of night, a friendly amendment to the motion that's been put forward. If someone would like to give that to Christopher. Councillor Wilson, sorry. I'm hoping that we won't need a break, so to speak, because you've only just seen well, now you've all just seen the amendment. Right, but I will talk on the fact that why I'm putting this amendment forward. I'm getting there, yes. That the council note the motion and following adoption of the local plan that the Cabinet Member for Planning and Development and Leader of the Council meet with the Leader of the Opposition and the Shadow Member for Planning and Development to discuss the process for enacting a timely review of the local plan.
Mr Mayor, I'll second that and may wish to speak later.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cox.
I believe that I can go ahead and give the reasons because I'm in the chair at the present moment in time speaking. Whilst this side note the motion, I hope that other councillors will support this amendment. I've always thought the local plan was an academic, analytical undertaking. Working within the framework as laid down by government, it obviously has developed into a political football because of mistrust, fake news, when it is all the National Party's interest to build hundreds of thousands of homes for residents all over the country.
This point of order.
Yes, I believe that in Labour, I don't see how the national picture is relevant here.
No, I think after tonight's meeting, we're all going to have some training on what's points of order and what are not. Councillor Phillips, can you carry on, please?
Yeah. See, why 9 councillors? Why not 11 or 7? How many councillors would be actually interested? Why discount any councillor that might be interested? Why does it has to be two-party? So there's things that I think need to be discussed at a deeper level before accepting your option tonight, your motion tonight. You know, if the committee want to take the idea to take politics out of the local plan and work across parties in any review, then I think this amendment and the way we should go forward will actually achieve that. Then there is the issue of resource and capacity. Reviewing the local plan means, as Councillor Wilson said, going through the same process as preparing a local plan in the first place. This involves updating all the evidence base, for example, and these are just a few. The Housing Needs Survey, which I imagine is the most topical, Employment Needs Survey, Water Cycle and Flood Risk Assessments, Highway Modelling, again topical, Historical Buildings and Landscape Character Assessment, the Sustainability Assessment, a Habitat Review, and of course Green Belt, to name a few. Now, if those fit in with the other 5 districts who wish to do their own plans at the same time as this council, and we can share the evidence base under the duty to cooperate, each assessment is estimated to cost between £5,000 and £10,000. After that, we'll have the consultation costs of the review, and finally the cost of the examination of the review, which I am told could cost up between £100,000 or £150,000 for the inspector and the programme officer. So the council could have budget implications which will need consideration in time of austerity. I'm pleased about the comment after the adoption of the plan. Then we can get together and consider all these aspects. At the present time, legally, the plan will be reviewed either wholly or partly prior to the end of the plan period, but we wish to bring that forward. But do the other districts? I am hoping that the inspector would recognise the need for some levers reference to the duty to cooperate that would benefit this council if required. As for the comment of progress in the motion, all councillors had a briefing note recently on the progress and will continue to do so as things move forward. As for openness, I did arrange and accept to meet interested councillors like Councillor Grant and Evans, right, about concerns, and even though I did not personally get a confirmation of date and time and acceptance by them, they did meet the officers that day. Well, almost at the end now of having the local plan adopted, as we are just awaiting the modifications required by the inspector, which will have a 6-week consultation period before going back to the inspector. One sentence. I look forward to seeing what recommendations he will make, and we are happy to keep members up to date. I trust councillors will accept this amendment recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Right, so we're now into debate on the amendment.
Point of order, Mr Mayor. Exactly what the amendment is. So which words are being deleted exactly, and what words are being inserted, and exactly where into the motion? Can we just have clarity on that, please?
Right. I can read the amendment again if that will help. But I'm not going to go through the whole of the thing and tell you which words are getting deleted and which are not. Right. Councillor Phillips. Do you want to answer the question that's just been asked? I can read the amendment again if you want. But
the first paragraph, residents across Nuneaton, blah, 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 to restore public confidence in the local plan process. I don't accept the amendment to the Constitution at this place, at this time, but I can say through the amendment that basically the amendment is for the people, councillors concerned, to meet rather than make a decision on this tonight. So the local plan committee, right, will be discussed, all aspects of the motion. We note the motion. What we're saying is we will discuss it in greater detail, right, with the amendment that Councillor Wilson, myself, Councillor Golby, Councillor Jackson meet after the adoption of the plan, right, to discuss, having noted the motion, that these things will take place, discussion-wise, because there's more involved than what you would think.
Councillor Tromans.
Obviously, this is a completely separate motion then, because there are bits in this which completely contradict what's in the original motion, including deleting the most fundamental bit about setting up the committee. And then if you move on to paragraph 2, it refers to immediate review shall be conducted. Then the paragraph below that, immediate review again. So that's not what's in here. So this is a counter motion, a different motion, but it's not an amendment. I mean, I know we stretched the point before this far, we're done.
Okay, Councillor Phillips, we're going to reject that amendment. Okay, so what we're going to do now is discuss the motion. So it's now open. The floor is open to anybody who wants to talk. Councillor Jackson.
This side of the chamber, I think Councillor Phillips was trying to be friendly in saying that we should actually open up more discussions between the political parties in this group. So I think his suggestion of meeting once we know what the inspector has said is not a bad one, and I would trust that Councillor Wilson and the Shadow Cabinet Member for Planning and Development would welcome that meeting and take up that opportunity. I hope Councillor Wilson will do that. I think it is too early to actually decide what a future local plan committee will look like, bearing in mind that we haven't yet heard back formally, as I understand it, from the government inspector. It may be, when we do, we need to look at that. I'm conscious that the Conservatives made a decision not to take part in the Borough Plan Working Party, and they've done that consistently now for quite some time. But we do need to consider exactly what a local plan committee would look like, and based as it is now, I'm uncomfortable to do that prior to knowing what the government inspector says. And similarly, really, in regard to section 2 of this motion, again, I feel it's very important that we hear back from the government inspector before we rush forwards with things that actually may not comply with what is being said. We are offering that meeting. I'm not having a nod from Councillor Wilson that he would. Oh, excellent, you're going to mention that. I think that's the way forward. We are wanting to be an open council. We are accountable to the public, and we need to move forward in a way that acknowledges that the pace of some things has to be dictated by the process we're already in. So I think we should go forward, wait for that formal notice back from the government inspector. We haven't had it, I believe, yet, Councillor Phillips. We should await that, and then, quite rightly, we should consider how we're going to move forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right, so I've got several speakers again. Start off with Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you to see me first. Anyway, we have a borough plan which is half a decade late in getting to a situation where it's up for review. We have a borough plan in proposal that intends to build more houses within the outskirts of this borough on greenfield and greenbelt sites in an area where the density of population is 7 times higher than the average for Warwickshire. We've had consultation that, quite frankly, has been pathetic, with meetings arranged at times that suit officers to be there during their working day rather than when public can attend after they've been at work. It was significant that the local MP in Bedworth arranged a consultation in the Woodlands that was attended by more people than attended the entire council arranged consultation meetings. I remember going to the early meetings of the Borough Plan Working Party, and I'm not surprised people from this side didn't wish to attend. We had meetings with no agenda, no minutes, absolutely no records. It's something that was completely opaque. It's absolutely no wonder that residents suspect that decisions are being taken in secret, that arrangements are being made with builders behind closed doors. That's what they suspect. I mean, in fact, the last 2 elections, the county council elections and these latest borough plan elections, have actually been a referendum on the borough plan over in Bedworth. It can be no surprise to you guys over there. You've lost 7 out of the 9 seats that have been up for grabs on essentially the state of the town centre and the borough plan, the fact that you're not being open about it, that you're building where people don't want there to be building, on sites where the infrastructure cannot be built. I can understand residents' suspicions that you've decided on a number on the back of a fag packet and now you're trying to fit the evidence to make it work. These are the things that are said to us on the doorsteps time after time. So we have a duty to review the borough plan. We have a duty to look at evidence and to respect the current picture. Right? No army goes into battle with a plan that was set in 2002 on some evidence and tries to keep adopting those tactics, even when the things moved on. You have to react to the situation as it is, and the situation as it is now, the evidence that we have from the government's white paper, for example, suggests that we need at least 1,800 houses less than you're planning. Let's have a review. Let's do it immediately. Let's have a proper panel that will record the decisions, have proper agendas, proper minutes, openness that the public can see. Let's put it on our website. You go to North Warwickshire Borough Council's website, look at their website about their plan. You can find what you're looking for in a couple of clicks. Ours, to find anything, residents give up in despair before they actually get to the information they're looking for. This borough plan looks like an exercise in labyrinthine sort of strategy to try and prevent the public from engaging with it, from preventing the public from having knowledge of what's going on, and from preventing them from having any say in the matter. We need more openness, more transparency. We need exactly what this motion puts forward, so that residents will once again have confidence that this council can put forward a plan that has meaning to them, that doesn't leave their roads gridlocked, that doesn't put industrial units in the green belt on the narrowest strip between the M6 and the town. Right? No wonder the public distrust what's happening with the borough plan. You're all sitting there expressionless. It's unbelievable. We're the ones that are listening to residents. We're the ones that are putting residents' views forward to you. You're doing your best to stop it from happening. I'm absolutely in favour of this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Evans, next, please.
I beg to rise this evening to speak in favour of the motion presented to us by the Conservative group. As many members will know, I've now been involved in the borough plan process for a few years as a member of the public before becoming elected to this council. I attended the inspectors' consultation events and whatnot. So I do have a degree of understanding of how the process should work in the ideal world. The motion presented this evening is all about openness and transparency, something which this Labour Council has failed to achieve in the last 8 years when preparing this plan. It's being produced behind closed doors, away from the public eye. The last public consultation events can only be described as damning. It wasn't good enough, and you prevented my residents in the Slough ward, particularly on the Bedworth woodlands, from being able to take part in the process in an adequate way. For example, there was only 2 consultation events in Bedworth, one of which was held late morning, early afternoon, basically when the majority of people go to work. And at both events, some of the officers present couldn't even answer some of the basic questions about the plan. And then to make things even better, for some reason, you forgot to tell residents on the woodlands who were living directly opposite the proposed site that the consultation events were even happening. I think one resident received a letter 2 weeks after the event, didn't they? It's absolutely laughable. The In Touch magazine, you forgot to publish those events in the In Touch magazine. So it kind of, when we sit here and we say that there's no purpose of In Touch, well, I wonder why, because you fail to put stuff like this in your In Touch magazine. And I think Lubbs from the Bulkington Residents Action Group said something last year which I found quite interesting. You went to the inspector and said that you went on radio channels saying basically advertising the event. Well, that radio channel that you referred to ceased to exist 2 months before you published the plan. Before you sent it to the inspector. In the local elections 2 months ago, the people of the borough delivered an astounding vote of no confidence in this Labour administration and your borough plan. 64% of the people who voted against you and your borough plan. So that is what, and you can laugh about it. It's not funny. It really isn't. In Bedworth, you want to build over 600 houses on the woodlands. It's really not funny. It's a floodplain. It's really not funny. And I think you should be ashamed of yourself, Councillor Phillips, as the Cabinet member, for laughing. It's really not funny. It really is woodlands, which flood at the moment. I think you should be ashamed of yourself, to be quite honest with you.
Right, but what I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, but what I'm saying is it is important. I mean, you're criticising me for just taking over the portfolio, right? The inspector should be...
That is why I think this recommendation this evening needs to be passed. The motion to create a local plan committee is vital not only for now, but also in the distant future. If we can have that honest and transparent debate where minutes are held and our residents can turn up to air their views, then maybe, quite possibly, we might be able to deter similar local plan proposals from going forward in the future.
Thank you for that. Next up is Councillor Graham.
Thank you.
Wait a minute, there's a point of order. Oh.
Mr. Mayor,
Okay, Councillor Jackson, would you like to move your amendment, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
If she butts in, then it mucks up everyone else speaking. Surely she should raise her amendment when she gets her turn to speak.
I don't believe that the councillor can move an amendment whilst another councillor has the floor still.
Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Because I was instructed to do so. You said you like to do things through the chair, so I did things through the chair. I can't support what Labour have put forward here because we just don't trust them. I mean, this is a council that would probably suspend habeas corpus if they could. You know, we just can't trust the way that they behave. I mean, on the borough plan, I've had people on Hospital Lane, a place where there's a large housing development being proposed in the borough plan, who didn't receive a letter about the consultation events going on, and another who received a letter, but only an hour before the meeting took place. And we've heard experiences from Councillor Evans as well.
We're going to be talking about things on the borough plan.
Yes.
Okay, this ain't about personal things or what's gone on in your ward or anything. This is about this here in front of us so we can get it finished.
That's what I'm talking about. Matters, but...
look, don't try and be funny with me. I've put up with this all night. I've not said that at all. I've not said that your ward isn't important. Every ward in this borough is important. But we will do things right. So if you want to carry on speaking, carry on playing.
Also, we had previous lack of faith in consultation events organised by this borough with the event that wasn't advertised in Councillor Golby's ward, which I attended. And it was only down to a resident that people knew about that. And we can't rely on Bedworth Conservatives to let people know about consultation events when they take place. I can't support what has been put forward, but what I will support is an immediate review of the borough plan. And it's pointless to hide behind the inspector saying, well, we have to wait to see what the inspector said. The inspector put forward a letter to this council on Friday, which we're not privy to, but assumably the leader of the council is. So if she gives us that letter, shares it with us tonight, then we can make a decision tonight. I don't know why we're hiding this information so close to the consultation opening on any major modifications. We need to reduce the housing numbers drastically. We've got government white papers. I know you like to blame the government on everything, but yeah, the government is saying that they want, that they believe that the borough needs less houses than the Labour group thinks they need. Birmingham's reduced their housing numbers. Coventry will sooner or later be reviewing their housing numbers, and that will have severe implications on the duty to cooperate. If Coventry don't need all these houses, then we definitely don't. And what residents in Bedworth are afraid of is becoming a suburb of Coventry, becoming an inner city area, and we don't want Coventry, so we don't want Nuneaton becoming a big city because of the Labour group's needs. We need to get a proper, accountable, minuted committee together that we can all take part in to review the plan at this stage, and we need to use that to reduce the housing figures. The government inspector, when I regularly attended the meetings, said that we had to do this by evidence, and that's exactly what we'll be doing. We'll be presenting this evidence to justify the plan and reduce the numbers as the white paper and other evidence leaving the EU, what have you, says. So I hope that we support the original Conservative motion and ignore the meddling from members opposite. Thank you.
I've got Councillor Jane Sargent.
To yell, I'm not going to call anybody. I don't operate like that. And all I want to say is that I've learnt a lot by watching several people in the training sessions on both sides. And I remember seeing Councillor Julie Jackson on the day after I got elected. I was really interested in watching it. And you were saying that you felt as though you'd lost your seats because of the borough plan. So I think we should go in with this, get it all sorted and get it done. Thank you.
Next I've got Councillor Walmsley.
clearly I support the motion that my party has tabled via Councillor Wilson this evening. It's been too long the views of our local residents have just been bulldozed, railroaded by the current controlling group. Residents are clearly unhappy with the vast amount of house building. We've just heard from Councillor Sargent here the comments of the own leader the day after the election. But it's not just that. The Labour-approved projects are quite clearly of the wrong type, in the wrong place, and with no infrastructure. Residents in the ward of Weddington, which I'm proud to represent, are some of the hardest hit. But across our borough, what we need to do as an authority is to have the duty that we have to those residents who already reside in existing communities and who wish to call and those who wish to call Nuneaton and Bedworth their home, and find a balance. As I said in my speech on previous motions this evening, whilst there are plenty of issues that we have in our town, there are many positive reasons for people to want to live in Nuneaton and Bedworth. But that it should not be damaged, or the expense of the existing communities that these new infrastructure projects are built. Now, the motion this evening specifically talks about wanting to renegotiate the Memorandum of Understanding with Coventry. Nor should this authority be building houses on behalf of Coventry so they can build more student blocks. Quite clearly, Nuneaton and Bedworth, and we've heard already, has a very high population density. We currently have around 1,400 persons per hectare, compared to a Warwickshire average of just 277. By the time this borough plan is over, we'll have risen to nearly 1,800 persons per hectare, an increase more than the current Warwickshire average over the period of our borough plan. For the public to have any confidence in the process, it must be open and transparent, not being seen to do agreements with Coventry behind closed doors. The crux of the motion tonight, therefore, Mr. Mayor, is this. We on this side want to see openness, transparency, scrutiny and meaningful participation as part of the borough plan review process, and ready for what will be a new iteration of that plan. Now, we know that, we've seen them vote against scrutiny this evening already. We saw that when they failed to amend tonight the final parting gift of Dennis Harvey, which slashed the number of OSPs. But it's what the public wants and expects. We all come here on behalf of the public and in the name of our local residents, and we must be accountable to them. But how can we be accountable for our actions when the current system, Labour's failed system, flawed system that we seek to replace and amend tonight, is designed to be opaque, is designed to shut residents out, is designed to shut them down? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Next up, and before we get anybody else up, this is on. This is what we're talking about. We're not talking about anything else. We're talking about this. Next up is Councillor Connachall.
Thank you. Plan has been going for 12 years. It has probably burnt £2 to £3 million. So the scrutiny of where we're going and what we're doing is really, really important, because we could have waited those 12 years and we could have wasted those £4 million. Fundamentally, this borough is growing slowly. It is having people living longer. It is having some people come into the area, some people leave the area. But this is a slow-growing borough, which fundamentally needs around 300 houses a year. Some years it needs 400 and 500. Some years it needs 100. But we're not a borough growing at 1,000 houses per year. And this borough plan goes back to 2011 and expects us to catch up for fictitious growth we've never had. And therefore it's expecting us to build over 1,000 houses a year in the next couple of years to catch up with this fictitious growth that never happened. So this scrutiny is really important, because what we need to do is we need to get, as some of the members opposite said, we need to get a sensible target. The Conservatives will not say what the sensible target is, but it's great to hear them say we need a sensible target. And what we should be doing is getting around the table and agreeing a real sensible target. If you have a target of 16,000, 15,000 homes, you don't build that number of homes. You build on the green fields, you build on the woodlands, you build in Whitestone, you build in Wellington, and because your target is bigger than the number of people you've got, you end up dying the projects like Camp Hill regeneration, because there's not the money to make the regeneration projects viable if we're building on all the countryside. So it's fundamental that we become evidence-based. We actually do look at what's happening in Coventry, because they're building 11,000 student bedrooms. 11,000 student bedrooms. Some in small blocks of 4 bedrooms, some in big tower blocks going 21 stories high. And that is changing the population dynamic. And none of the regional plans admit all that student growth is going on in Coventry. And we need to have that discussion with Coventry in terms of what's happening. An honest discussion, not you take 4,000 homes or you do this. We need to look at the evidence and we need to be honest. Yeah, we are not a Warwick. In Warwick, if they want to build 1,000 homes in a year, they approve 1,000 homes, they get built because of the economy in Warwick. And so I do hope whatever goes forwards, we don't just do it on political lines, we actually do it on getting good people to talk about what we need, the demographics, the older people, where the students go, where the families go, and actually do this properly. So we're not wasting more years and having more silly political arguments. We don't. The whole plan was based on spreadsheets. You put stupid numbers in, you get stupid numbers out. We know the real numbers. Last year we gained 1,000 people in the borough, and we needed 400 homes for those 1,000 people. Real numbers. We built 500, and we added 100 more empty homes. These are the real numbers, and we need to plan a better borough. And we need to do it cross-party and with the public. And the one thing we never were allowed to discuss at consultations at Borough Plan was the numbers, whereas the numbers is the absolute first thing you discuss. You discuss, we're going to try and build 500 houses this year, and then work out where the school place and the transport to do that. None of these magic numbers are 14,000. I'm really pleased we've got some new people running the Labour cabinet. It's going to be difficult, but I do hope we can actually start talking about the evidence and talking about what's going on in Coventry rather than the old style we had. And the big thing also, we're not talking about air quality. Parts of our borough, people are dying early. People having incredibly poor health because of all the traffic funneling through in Bedworth, in Abbey Green, in the old Hinkley Road gyratory. And this is because we're planning badly. If we plan a borough sustainably so that each area has the houses and the schools it needs, you actually have less commuting across to get schools, less pollution. So I do think a good borough plan will be an environmentally good plan as well, and it will be better.
Yeah. It is, Mr. Mayor. 10-15 minutes left of time, and therefore under 4A12 section M of the Constitution, I move that the meeting continue beyond the 3 hours in duration.
Okay, because we've had that, let's go and move to a vote. So, all those in favour of finishing this off tonight? Any against? Okay, thank you. Right, we're going to carry on then a little bit longer. So I've got a couple more speakers. Next up is next up to speak is Councillor Pomfret.
There's some choice little sentences. I'll quote a few back. The numbers the Labour group think we need. Let's have a chat and we'll agree a target. And apparently somebody's agreed behind closed doors with Coventry City Council. Well, I'm sure people really do know what actually has to happen, because it has to happen all over the country where a borough plan or a local plan is being drawn up. We have no say, really, when it comes down to it, over how many houses we have to provide. We don't decide, oh, we'll have a few less, we'll have a few more. Oh, we'll just chop a few off there, we'll add a few over there. That's not how it works. I'm sure they know over there, but they don't want people to know. The sub-region basically has a formula. They work out how many houses the government think the sub-region should provide. In the sub-region, we've got 5 district councils, 1 Labour, 4 Tory. We've got a Tory county council and 1 Labour city council. They have to agree amongst themselves where the houses are going to go. And they agreed that the numbers that are coming to Nuneaton and Bedworth will come to Nuneaton and Bedworth. And believe it or not, Councillor Harvey and others resisted what the others wanted us to do. And in the end, we were forced to increase the numbers we were going to accept by Stratford, Tory, Warwick, Tory, Rugby, Tory, County Council, Tory, North Warwickshire, Tory, and Coventry City Council, Labour. No behind the doors meetings. That is what happened. Now, I'm sure you don't want people to know, because they certainly don't. But that is how it goes. And it doesn't matter what happens next, unless the legislation is changed, it will happen all over again. And if you think they're going to, in Warwick or someone say, ooh, poor little Nuneaton and Bedworth, they haven't got many green fields, we'll cut their housing numbers. Well, I don't think, actually, having spoken to them down there, even some Tories, that is what will happen. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Next up, I've got Councillor Golby.
Thank you for anything, so you don't have to take the mickey next time. To come back quite quickly on the housing numbers and the list of Tory and Labour councils, yeah, we've got a duty to cooperate. It's not a duty to roll over, it's a duty to cooperate.
This is your very short memories. The duty to cooperate.
Councillor Pomfret. Councillor Golby, do you want to continue, please?
I mean, really? Forced. I thought, when was it?
Try and continue with this tonight and get it done, please.
So what you say, like you've forced us not to have scrutiny tonight, and you.
Can you just carry on
the
with
government widely reassesses the need for the housing numbers in this borough. Hold on to your hats. I know you've been desperate to get this one. The white paper actually takes into consideration that we need 1,800 less homes than objectively assessed need for our borough, not including Coventry Overspill. So that's actually around 8,200 homes, not what you've proposed or been forced to propose within the borough plan. You may feel like you were forced to accept the borough plan, however, on the numbers. However, you weren't forced as to where to put the houses. You weren't. Or, unless, I go back to a meeting minutes on the 16th of October 2012, and I'll quote from the meeting minutes directly, Councillor W.H. Shepherd declared having been whipped whilst a member of the Labour group in respect of the borough plan proposals. But he stated it does not now apply as he's now an independent member. So maybe there was a little bit of forcing going on there, but it was from your own ranks to your own people. So let's not forget that, and that is the single reason why we would not take up any seat on any working plan, any working party, because you'd already made the decisions. It wasn't a working party; it was a sit there and listen, because we've already decided party, and that's not valued use of anybody's time. And then again, you talk about being forced. If you're that impotent, what's the point of you? Really?
Please, get on with this business, please.
Yes. Invite for a meeting to chat about this. I don't think it deserved a motion. You could have just sent me an email. I'm sure Councillor Wilson feels exactly the same. The motion that we're proposing is actually so things are not kept in the dark anymore. I mean, as it's been mentioned, the whole consultation process was a bit of a mess. And the consultation in my ward actually took place before it was advertised. I've said that before. So, again, that's not my residents, but we are offering a way for the residents to actually see what's going on. And I do hope that you take it for what it is. It's not anything other than we want some transparency and we want a review based on the government white paper numbers that are actually widely available.
Right. We are going to stick to this now because otherwise we're going to run out of time. It's been well debated anyway. We've had eight speakers now. So we're going to move on to the next speaker, Councillor Tromans.
Purely to this motion. This motion is here for a purpose, one purpose only. It's only needed because the public don't have trust in the controlling group and their borough plan. We don't have trust in the controlling group and the borough plan, and from what I've heard tonight, the misdirection, the half-truths, the whatever, I can understand why people don't. And, you know, we've heard about the back catalogue of the sham consultations and all the rest of it. I'm not going to labour that point again. Suffice to say that this is needed, because whilst we might hear Councillor Jackson say, oh, we believe in transparency and whatever, their actions totally contradict that. Totally contradict that. When I was first elected, at my very first council meeting in this chamber, I sat where Councillor Gran is sitting now, and I extended an invitation. My very first words were words of conciliation about the borough plan. Please, let's have open, publicly scrutinised, minutes kept and proper agendas kept of meetings about the borough plan, and we will happily partake in those. So you've heard how we withdrew because members were being whipped, and it was right for the Conservatives to do that. But when I was elected, I stood up and I said, let's make a fresh start. The borough plan's so important, it should be above party politics. Please, we will join with you. All you have to do is not try and do things behind closed doors. Have a little bit of transparency, openness. Transparency, Councillor, the thing you talked about earlier. Openness. What's your solution? We put forward this as our solution that says this compels you to do these things because you have lost our trust and the public's trust, as demonstrated by the outcome of the last election. What was your answer, Councillor? Your answer was, yes, we want transparency and openness. Therefore, our solution isn't to do this, as is to call a meeting behind closed doors with the leader of the opposition so you can kick the can down the road.
Councillor Tromans, stick to this, please.
That's why this motion is needed. Because your answer to transparency is to try and hide it and have another secret meeting. You're going to vote against this, we're going to vote in favour of it, and the public's going to continue to draw its own conclusions.
Okay, Councillor Longden, point of order. Point of order, Mr Mayor. Councillor Golby said it, Councillor Tromans said it. They're accusing me of things that never happened. I sat on the working party with your good self. Councillor Condacourt was there for a while. We didn't get the papers until we sat down at the table. How was we whipped? I was never whipped, so do not call me a liar. If you do, I will want an apology and a retraction. I do not lie about things like that, and you cannot be whipped on planning issues anyway. So don't mention it again, because if you do, I will take it up.
Point of personal explanation. I was actually reading from minutes where it publicly states. Signed off minutes as well, and it wasn't specific to you, it was the meeting minutes that I read out.
Okay, listen, that's, so again, you just stood up, again, you just stood up. It don't matter, you stood up. Right, so we're going to carry on with this. Next speaker is Llewellyn Nash. And can you please stick to this, please?
Oh, I am. Don't worry. I'm actually speaking on behalf of my residents. I'm the councillor for Bedworth Heath, and this is largely going to affect them. And during my time of canvassing, got a very dry mouth, time and time again, the borough plan came up. I knocked on every single door, and the response was, we don't want it. Some of the comments the residents made include, what do you mean we're going to have an industrial estate next to our school? The traffic on a very tiny, narrow road, all the lorries and the HGVs, is going to cause traffic chaos. not built for the amount of traffic using it. Why are they using greenfield land? I thought they had to use brownfield land first. And one resident actually said, I had no idea about this, that there's going to be an industrial estate at the back of my garden. The will of the people spoke on May the 3rd. There is no appetite for an industrial estate and houses being built on greenfield land, and there's not the infrastructure to be able to deal with it. No extra doctors have been put in, dentists, schools, hospitals. And then there's the issue of the...
Councillor Nash.
Yes.
Can you just please speak on things that relate to this moving this motion? This is nothing to... We're not debating it or anything. This is just about moving this motion.
Okay, I'll end by saying, according to the white paper, we don't even need to build as many houses as the council say. Should councillors support the motion before us this evening, it will allow the creation of a standing committee. It will add openness, transparency and early public participation in the process so residents can have their greater and earlier input. I find it ironic, actually, that we're speaking about one single word tonight, and that's scrutiny.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor. Got two more speakers, then that's it. Next up is Councillor Hancox.
Mr Mayor, openness and transparency. Fact, this council was one of the first in the country to introduce public participation at all meetings, except where those meetings have to be confidential. Some people should bear in mind they also sit on another authority, i.e. the County Council, Tory, which doesn't have that same opportunity. Not every meeting of the county is allowed to have public participation. So I kind of take exception, Mr Mayor, to saying that we're not open and transparent. We are, and I thank Councillor Pomfret for pointing out it's actually the opposite effect. It's difficult to support this motion, Mr Mayor, because of those reasons and that very first statement within the notice of motion. We continue to have the conspiracy theories, and that's what a lot of them are, Mr Mayor. Councillor Wilson said we're forcing development. Council's not forcing any development. It's the developers and the landowners and the government that are doing that. It's not the council that develop these things. These are propositions put forward by landowners, developers, etc. We have to give them proper consideration. Now, you've asked us to speak to the local plan, Mr Mayor, local plan committee proposal, but there's also insinuations within what's been said tonight. One about deals with developers. I'd hate to think that's the case. If that is the case, then I want to know about it so I can report it to the monitoring officer and, if necessary, the police. So provide the evidence for that. Second one to that, Mr Mayor, is the implication about planning committee decisions. We have probably made some decisions that we do not like, but based against officer advice, professional advice, against often county objections, and against government policies, it's difficult to reject some of those applications. And we all know what happens then. They keep talking about money. We know we could be hit with massive costs on some things, although we don't like it. And I like to think up until now, the planning committee has been made up of members independently minded to come to their own decision during that decision making. So back to the local plan committee and etc. to the local plan really. I think one thing we're all agreed on is that we should have that local plan in place, because what that does when we've got it, it provides guidance to all of the council and in particular to the planning committee. That's what it will do. It will clear up things and do that. It's in the hands of the inspector at the moment. It's difficult to see how this proposal, this motion, could do anything else except... I don't see how you can actually do it, because it's in the hands of the inspector until he comes back with a decision for us. So again, it's early doors, it's designed for a specific reason, and we all know what that is. It's also been spoken about the other authorities and how allocations are made. It's very difficult. Well, I don't think you could do this anyway, but it would be very difficult anyway, bearing in mind part of that process has been the inspector's involvement with other plans. And I do know factually that the inspector has approved the Coventry plans. So if we're going to suddenly chuck all of ours out, don't know where we go with that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hancox. The final speaker now, Councillor Lloyd.
Probably going to be the most unpopular councillor in this room. Mr. Mayor, I think at the end of the day, what the opposition want is a review. I think what we need in here tonight is a compromise on both sides so we can get something through and get on with it. Or we're going to be back here again and again and again debating exactly the same thing. So we need to move forward. So I'm going to put an amendment to the proposal. This is why I say I'm going to be unpopular. Okay, and hopefully it can gain support from the opposition and we can move forward. This is wrote on the back of a fag packet, by the way, because I wrote it on this paper while we've been talking. The contentious sentence is sentence 1. So delete paragraph 1. Amend paragraph 2 to say to consider following the adoption of the local plan possible amendments. On 2 further down at the bottom, to read, upon adoption of the borough plan, a timely review shall be conducted to ensure that the borough plan meets most up-to-date needs of the local residents, and delete the final paragraph, the final 2 paragraphs. The offer is still open that the leader would meet with the leader of the opposition and the planning portfolio would meet with the portfolio holder from the opposition to discuss the issues once the actual plan has come forward from the inspector. Our biggest problem is that we see this is a bit premature and that we need to move forward. We can't move forward until...
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. So, as I have heard, it's been read out, and I understand the amendment that the councillor is making. Again, it is very much in the same vein as the original one. It negates the substance of our motion. This is a motion that is there because we have heard time and time again that whatever you guys think over there, whatever we think over here, the public has voted to say they have lost confidence.
Can you just state the point of order, please?
So it would negate our motion, and therefore it is not a valid amendment. If the councillor is sincere, he can support ours.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I did try to wait a way forward. We know they don't want a way forward. They want us to vote against this, so I'll vote against it. I'll withdraw my amendment.
Okay, thank you.
And can I move the vote, please?
Seconded.
Okay, Councillor Wilson, you get the right to reply.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't preempting you. I was just letting a colleague back in. I do appreciate that Councillor Jackson is trying to be more constructive and cooperative than her predecessor. In my entire 4 years as Leader of the Opposition with Councillor Harvey, he did not offer to meet me once. I'm more than willing to take up on that offer. In fact, myself and Councillor Golby, following other discussions that we have had, have been waiting the phone call or the email. So it's not that we haven't been waiting, it's not that we haven't been willing, it's that we've been waiting. So that dialogue, as we have always said, following the results of the election, we're always willing to maintain that open dialogue wherever possible. Because grinding council work to a halt in the result of no overall control suits no one. Residents want stable government at local control. Councillor Phillips, I believe, raised about it being two-party. There's nothing being two-party about this. If the political balance rules state that Councillor Condacor gets a seat, he gets a seat. He might frustrate the hell out of me sometimes, but actually, sometimes he raises valid points. And if he was to sit on the working party, I have no issue with that if it's legal and above board and works out with the matters. I actually think there are other people who can contribute to this, because by the very nature of this motion, allowing members of the public where appropriate to come in and have their say could be beneficial. I'm sorry I can't remember your name from the gallery, the one sat next to Lubbs, but I know you've done a tremendous amount of work on trying to interpret the data and what's been going on. Some of what he has been putting forward, Mr Mayor, could be invaluable to the work of what the local plan committee does. The reason why we want this committee is that Councillor Tromans is absolutely correct. We simply do not have that trust, and more importantly, the residents don't have the trust in the controlling group to do this. You say that you want to compromise. You could have said, once this motion was put out on the agenda, you could have emailed me and said, we want to compromise, can we come up with something? I'm sure we would have been more than willing to meet, but instead, you haven't spoken to us until tonight and looked at working for a compromise motion. We might have got one if you'd have emailed me and said, you never know, we could have actually agreed on something, on a motion together. But that didn't happen. So you can't place the blame on this side of the chamber. Actually, this motion, by and large, was proposed almost 4 years ago. So it's not as if this motion is new. I've actually recycled a motion I put forward about 4 years ago to actually do this. All this motion does, and I don't understand why people opposite are so frightened about this, is put the Borough Plan Working Party on a proper...
Point of order, Mr Mayor. I'm sorry, I'm not frightened of the motion. I wanted to work with them. They threw it back in her face, so fine, I'll sit down.
Councillor Wilson, can you just finish off your right to reply, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The Borough Plan Working Party doesn't meet in the open, it meets in secret, it doesn't have proper minutes, it doesn't have proper agenda, it doesn't allow members of the public to speak. But the fundamentals are actually there if we allow all that to happen and have the input and the involvement from residents. And let it be known on the board behind yourself, Mr Mayor, the other side of the wall, this meeting's happening. All this motion does is put that properly on the legal basis and footing. Waiting for the inspector isn't going to help. We already know we've got to have a local plan. We've been required to have one since 2004 when the last Labour government put it forward through an Act of Parliament. We know that there will be a review stage and process. That's already been legislated for. So waiting for the inspector isn't going to make a difference. We can put the building blocks in place now. In fact, waiting even longer for the inspector to come back could delay things even further, because if we do decide, and the controlling group then decide actually this is a good idea now we've looked at it, we've got to convene another council meeting to actually deal with it and get on with it. We actually put the building blocks in place now. The residents want and expect us to do this job properly. They have absolutely zero, zilch, nada confidence in this council's ability to do so. What this does is give them some confidence that we are being open, democratic and transparent, that they can have an input where it is legal and appropriate. We accept there are elements where it can't be. But if you are just putting blockers in place because it's a Conservative motion, please don't, because our residents expect it. And also, 16,000 odd residents voted for this proposal because it was in our motion to do so, in our manifesto to do so. I call for a recorded vote, Mr Mayor.
Okay, recorded vote. Move it. Okay, can we have some silence in the back, please? Right, I'm going to move to recorded vote then. Simone.
Councillor Beaumont.
Councillor Bernard. No, just voting.
Councillor Brinley Edwards. Councillor Brown. Councillor Croft. Councillor Daffern. Councillor Doughty. Councillor Elliott. Councillor Evans. Councillor Gazane. Councillor Glass. Councillor Golby. Councillor Gran. Councillor Gutteridge. Councillor Hancocks.
Against.
Councillor Hocking. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Condacor. Councillor Llewellyn Nash. Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Longdon. Councillor Pandare. Councillor Phillips. Councillor Pomfret. Councillor Rudkin. Councillor A. Sargent. Councillor J. Sargent. Councillor J. Shepherd. Councillor T. Shepherd. Councillor Smith. Councillor Tandy. Councillor Tromans. Councillor Walmsley. Councillor Watkins. And Councillor Wilson. 17.
Casting vote against.
That's
lost on the casting vote. Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, could you just clarify that result because the microphone wasn't on at the time and we didn't hear here?
Okay, thank you. That motion was lost. So that concludes the business for tonight. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. Can you clarify that? It was lost because you used your casting vote. Is that correct?
That wasn't a point of order, but yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was lost because I used my casting vote. Yeah. So thank you for all attending. Please take your time on the way home, and see you all at the next meeting.